When Garry Kasparov started in the Wijk aan Zee tournament in January 1999, he hadn't played a tournament for 11 months, and although he was still world champion, he was actually having difficulties in organising his next match. So he was desperate for a good result to show that he was still the preeminent player in the world. He started well with 2.5 out of 3, and then came this game, this now famous game, in round 4. He has the white pieces against Veselin Topalov. We join the game after 19 moves. It's already quite a tense position. Let's look at the pawn structure. That always tells us a lot about the position. You can see that, well, both players have castled on the queen side, and Topalov has advanced his pawns, which means the king lacks cover from the pawns, although not significant at the moment as there's no particular breakthrough. And just compare with Kasparov's king, very good cover from his pawns there. White has a very slight space advantage in the centre of the board. Now, if Kasparov has time to build up with moves like rook e1 and start squeezing against this pawn on d6, that could be very unpleasant for black, and this knight sits well on a5. So Topalov realised this was now or never. He should advance this pawn, and this looks like a good move. Now, if Kasparov wants to play it safe, of course he could just exchange everything on d5, and the position is about equal. But Kasparov, obviously, even at this stage, had seen a very clever idea. He gave a check, and the king came to the side. Then rook e1, so holding the tension in the position, and if the position opens in the centre, you know, if black exchanges on e4, then this could be good for white. So understandably Topalov closed the position, good move. So, you know, if this knight has to go backwards, then obviously, you know, black has secured his king, and his pawn phalanx on the queen side looks very strong. But of course Kasparov had prepared this riposte, knight d5. This has to be taken, and it looks as though Topalov has everything under control. For example, if the queens are exchanged, then the check comes and king up, and black will collect this pawn on d5 and maintains this wonderful pawn front on the queen side. But here is the start of all the fun, because Kasparov had prepared a really fantastic move. Rook takes pawn. Now, Topalov could play it safe here. He could simply bring his king up the board, and I'm sure he would have seen this. And this would lead by force to an endgame which is roughly equal. First of all, white has to protect the knight. Black exchanges, takes the pawn, and, well, black will take the pawn on b4. And this position is roughly level. Topalov would have seen that. But Toppy is a very principled player, and he clearly couldn't see why he couldn't take the rook, so he did. You know, he plays for a win, as, you know, very much in his style. You know, a very principled man. If you can't see the refutation, if you can't see why white is winning, then you should just take the rook. Now, what happens if queen takes pawn? Then the queen blocks and the attack is over. So now we have Kasparov's next dazzling idea. He gives up rook number 2. If this is taken, it leads by force to mate, actually, after this. And the queen goes in, and when this is blocked, knight c6, and then a mate on a7. So that can't be taken. So the king came up the board. And then queen takes d4 check. Now, Topalov took the knight on a5. Well, let's just see one variation. There are so many variations, it's difficult to go into all the detail, but let's have a look at this. This is very interesting, because there's a really beautiful move. Now here, black is still the exchange up. if he can trade queens, then he should be winning actually. So how does white win this? If the queen comes back to d4, then the black queen blocks. Looks like they're just repeating the position. In this position, white has a fantastic move. Bishop e6. This is not the only fantastic move we're going to see in this game, but I just had to show you this one. It's beautiful. It basically just holds white's position together just for a couple of moments, and then white resumes the attack. So first of all, if this is taken, then white wins the queen, should be winning. If, let's say, bishop takes d5, now this is very beautiful, you simply play b4, protect the knight, and there are two different mating nets going on. Queen d4 mate is threatened, and if bishop takes bishop, then rook b7. Beautiful. And going back to this position, if king takes a5, then b4 check, and once again it's mate on this diagonal. What a move! Bishop e6. Black has a whole move to try to defend, but can't do it. Okay, so that's why Toppy didn't block with queen c5. Instead, he took the knight. Now we come to the second phase of the game, because Kasparov had seen that he could bring the king right up the board, and now his idea is to deliver checkmate on b3. Okay, well, what happens if we play bishop takes d5? Then white forces mate very easily, because after king b2 there's no defense to queen b3. You give up the queen, but then it's mate like that. By the way, I should say, coming back to queen c3, instead of queen c3, it was pointed out later that maybe white could have done better instead of queen c3 with rook a7, but I don't want to go into that. I want to look at Kasparov's concept, not subsequent analysis. So queen c3, threatening a mate on b3. Queen takes d5 defends against the mate, obviously, because the queen will take. And if king b2, with this idea of queen b3, this doesn't work, because now black can force the trade of queens. So now we introduce the second mating idea, which is to capture on a6, and in that way to get at the king. Now what happens if we protect the pawn with the rook? Now king b2 works, threatening queen b3 mate. Now of course queen d4 can be met by, well, you can just exchange and play rook a6 mate. So bishop b7 is absolutely forced in this position, defending the pawn. So now Kasparov took. Of course that can't be taken because queen b3 mate. So queen c4. Apparently rook e8 was a better defensive chance, but okay, I don't want to go into that. White would still be better in that case. But queen c4 looks like a very good defensive move. If rook a7, going for the mate on a6 again, then rook d1 check, and here rook d6 wins for black, defending the pawn, and black is a rook up. Okay, so here after queen c4, Kasparov took on f6, threatening queen a6 mate. Well, there are two possible ways to play this for black. Topalov took the pawn on a3. Let's have a very quick look at rook d1 check, because there are some very interesting variations. And now black defends with rook a8, queen b6, threatening queen a5 mate, so coming from this side again. That forces an exchange of queens. Then rook f7. So the king is still trapped here, and this is the threat, to bring the bishop into the game to deliver mate on b3. Now black can escape, but white is still a lot better here. The point is that after, well, let's say king b6, white has 3 pawns for the exchange, and if instead rook takes b4, c3 actually traps the rook, and that rook and pawn endgame should be better for white. So instead, Topalov took on a3. Now this is reaching a really critical moment, because the king is breaking free from its mating net, and here it looks as though the king is actually reasonably secure, and then it's going to be black's turn. White's king is now exposed. The queen and the rook simply can't get in the attack, and this bishop is miles away. Suddenly it looks as though black is coordinating. Here, Kasparov saw that he has a beautiful move that just tips black over, c3 check, and this just disturbs black enough. Okay, this was taken, and this allows the queen in. So the queen at least comes back into the game. Well, there are various ideas here, but let's look at the game continuation. The king comes forward. In all cases, White's queen gets back into the attack. And, well, if the king comes to the e-file, then rook e7 check. So king d1, and again for a moment it looks as though the king has found security, and then it's going to be black's turn with queen d3 and so on. But here's the next remarkable move from Kasparov. He can't check with the queen. He can't check with the rook. Well, not a sensible check anyway. This bishop looks miles away, but it now comes back into the game. Fantastic. If the bishop is captured, then this leads to mate. And rook e7, there we go. The rook comes into the game. And if the queen moves away, then queen e2 is mate. So Topalov tries one last trick. Rook d2 looks critical. If bishop takes, then we take the queen with check. And black survives. But here is Kasparov's answer. Rook d7. Absolutely brilliant. Just hangs together. So clearly because of the pin, black is unable to take the queen. If queen takes bishop, then queen takes rook is mate. So the rook has to be taken, and then we can take the queen. And the threat is queen c1 mate. And, well, black is lost here. And even here, just when you think, well, two rooks for a queen, that's enough, everything hangs together because that rook is en prise in the corner. Now, queen against rook. There's still a little bit of tidying up to do because, well, that pawn could be a threat. But here's a good move, and that allows White's king to be shielded on the a-file. And now the queen finally comes back again and connects with the king. And now it's lost. Let's just see how Kasparov did it. The king and the rook can't attack any longer, and then it's the queen's turn to come in. Queen g1 will be the move if rook takes pawn, and otherwise it's time for the queen to mop up some pawns. So here Topalov resigned. Garry Kasparov considers this the greatest game he's ever played, and I'm not going to disagree with him. Kasparov went on to win the tournament with a splendid score of 10 out of 13, just half point ahead of Anand. But that really brought him back on track, and started playing very good chess in 1999. That's the last game of Kasparov's that I'm going to look at on this channel for a while. I've promised that I'm going to look at some of Karpov's games when I have time. It's going to be a busy schedule for me over the summer. I'm going to be commentating and reporting in Biel in Switzerland, and then I'm going to be visiting the Olympiad in Norway as a commentator for ChessBase. So I look forward to those tournaments. I'm going to be posting lots of reports from there. Thanks very much for watching.